What do you make of Washington? Their win total, according to FanDuel, is 6.5. I think they're a bowl team. I don't know if they're a lot much more than that. That's Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies, joining me here to discuss. So 6.5 win total, Roman. I'm leaning towards the under. I see the over, but I think they're making a bowl game. Like, I don't see a full TCU regression here from national championship runner-up to now you just don't make a bowl game. I don't see that. I also don't see what I expect from Michigan this year, which is you're not a national championship level, but you are going to be a top 15, 20 team. I think there's a middle ground there, and Washington can thread that needle.
Yeah, and Spencer, that's exactly where I've had them. I'm right in the middle there at 8-4, where you look at the schedule. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit. One of my biggest things that I've had all offseason is I legitimately believe this team can beat Iowa. And I'm looking at the matchup that
wow.
Yeah. It's I know
the fans in Iowa City are not going to like that.
That's fine. I understand it, but when their offense can score over 20 points a game, then we can have a discussion. That's kind of where I am right now, where I think that defense is elite. I think that's going to be one of the best defenses in college football. But I can say the same thing about Steve Belichick's defense up at Washington. I've been really impressed with the scheme up there. My question is, which one of those two offenses is going to score a little bit more? And right now, with what we've seen from what Jed Fish can do and what he's able to scheme up, I have to give the edge to him right now, where it's going to be a low-scoring game. It's going to be a true Big Ten defensive battle. But as of right now, I want to give the edge to Washington because of the experience of Will Rogers, because of some of the really exciting playmakers that they have on that side of the ball, plus Iowa's offense-ish, if you're going to call it that.
It's not great.
Nope.
It's not great.
Nope.
It could be better. They made a change, finally.
Yeah.
It's like USC on defense. Like, okay, we knew that this change needed to be made before last season. You made it going into this year. I mean, better late than never on that front. Two reasons I don't think Washington goes into Iowa and wins. Number one, I see what you're saying about the scheme Washington's going to bring. I question whether they have the personnel to play at the sort of level that scheme might be producing in 2 to 3 years' time, especially with the way that Jed Fish and company are recruiting up in Seattle. Number two, Iowa at home, that's a tough place to win. That's a tough place to win. And I have dogged on Iowa's offense, rightfully so. It's bad. It has been bad. I still don't expect it to be good, but this is one of the highest floor programs in all of college football. I think Iowa's floor is higher than Washington's this year, and they have a lot more continuity than Washington. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But that's why I don't see them beating Iowa. Is that's not a program where when you're trying to figure stuff out, you just go into their home stadium and win a football game. I think you have to be decidedly the better football team, and I don't think Washington is.
So I certainly hear your point, and I respect that. I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. Just the more that I look at it, the more I look at Washington's defense, I feel that it's going to create a ton of turnovers. This defense is so sound. They brought in a whole lot of veterans to run it in year one. They brought in guys like Cameron Broussard from Sacramento State, who's somebody who Michigan and Ohio State were really hot on the recruiting trail after. They brought in Justin Harrington, a seventh-year senior. Spencer, I was still in college when Justin Harrington was getting recruited out of high school. They brought in a guy like Deshaun Lynch, another Sacramento State guy who's really flexible all over the defensive line. I love what he can do. Sebastian Valdez up front. They brought in a lot of guys who are going to execute the scheme at a high level. Ephesians Price at corner being another one. And that's without mentioning Carson Bruner, the middle linebacker, who, in my opinion, is going to be one of the best in the Big Ten. And the more from what I've watched from this defensive practice and from the more that I've seen out of it, the more that I think, yes, this defense is going to create turnovers and wreak some havoc. My question is, and that's the biggest question with Washington, right? Is there are a lot of things going on, there's a lot of movement, but as long as the offensive line can be average, I think that Washington can exceed 6-6.
Okay, well, let's get into it here. They start with Weber State and Eastern Michigan. No issues there. Those will be wins. Then the Apple Cup neutral site against Washington State. I've got that as a win and the Northwestern game. I think this is a 4-0 start. I wouldn't sleep on that Apple Cup, though. I think between Washington State and Oregon State, the Pac-12 remainders, I think Washington State's the better of the two. And, I'm interested to see how they progress to the quarterback position post Cam Ward. I think that's a game that Washington should win. I think it's one that they absolutely can lose if they don't show up ready to play.
So I agree with you there. The neutral site. We can use air quotes there since it's at.
That'll be a home game for Washington.
Yeah, pretty much. I feel that's going to factor in a little bit more there. But I do agree with you that the Wazoo team is more talented than people think. I do have Washington winning there, and I have them starting 4-0. I actually have them starting 5-0. Where that Rutgers team is really solid. Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
I really do like that team. Out guy, that dude can play. I really love watching him. The Muhammad Toure injury is rough. I think that Greg Schiano has done a really nice job there. He's schemed up a really, really solid defense. But the more that I look at it, and I look at what Jedd Fisch's first season at Washington can be. This is a Washington team who, it happened a bunch of years ago, but we've seen Washington have to go across the country on a Friday night. In the not so distant past, it feels like it was a lifetime ago at this point. So it's something that this program has been able to do before. None of the guys on this team were there, but this program has shown that they can go win in Piscataway on a Friday night against a much different team. But I have faith that they're going to be able to do that.
Okay, so this is where we disagree because I have been on this for a while. I think Rutgers is winning that football game. Okay. And it's not because I don't think Washington is capable of winning. It is a long trip. It is a Friday night. So you have a long trip across the country and a short week of prep. And Rutgers is not bad. If I asked you right now, what was Rutgers' record last year? Most people probably wouldn't be able to tell you. They went 7-6 and beat Mario Cristobal's Miami Hurricanes in the Pinstripe Bowl. You probably wouldn't know that. And guess what? They did that with a quarterback completing less than 50% of his passes. I'm not wild about the transfer they brought in, but it's got to be at least a little bit better. Like, I think Rutgers, they've got kind of a favorable schedule, could be sneaky nice. So I think Washington loses there. I think they lose at Iowa as well. I think they lose to Michigan, sandwiched in between. I think they beat Indiana because, Washington's ability to reset, I think, is much stronger than what Curt Cignetti will be able to do there in Bloomington. And then I think they lose 3 of their last 4 because the schedule just beefs up. USC at home, at Penn State, UCLA at home. I think that's a win because I'm incredibly down on UCLA this year. And at Oregon, I think that's a loss. I think where Washington can get themselves to the 7-8 win range is if they can find a way to win either the USC game or at Rutgers. I think those games, if you win either one, I think USC is a better team, but I think Rutgers is the tougher matchup because it's such a long trip and you're on the road and you're going up against a solid team. Those are kind of the linchpin games here that'll determine whether Washington, in my view, goes over or under this win total.
I'm 100% with you there. It's something we, talked about over on Locked On Huskies a little bit last week, where when we were going through the schedule here, looking at what the season is going to turn into, those are the 2 biggest games. It's what happens at USC and what happens at Rutgers.
Hosting USC.
Yes, sorry, at home against USC.
Correct.
Where I really like what they're doing on defense, Spencer.
I do too. I've been on this for months. I've been on this for months. I had Yogi Roth on the show at Big Ten Media Days. He sees the same sort of thing. The College Game Day guys were talking about USC. Everyone has wanted Lincoln Riley to make radical changes on the defensive side of the ball. He's got a new defensive coordinator and 2 other new coaches, one of whom was a head coach at North Dakota State, one of whom was a defensive line coach in the NFL. Like, they brought in guys on that side of the ball. And I think personnel-wise, if you looked at Washington's defense and USC's, USC'd probably have the edge.
Yeah, USC has got a super strong defense there. I really do love.
Well, I don't know about super strong. I think dramatically better.
Yeah, in terms of where we've seen Lincoln Riley defenses in the past, it's going to be super strong. I feel that that's fair to say. When I look at Washington's defense, though, one thing that I'll say, I'm going to mark it down as we record here. I think that we're going to look back at this Washington defense at the end of October, early November, and you're going to say, oh, there are a lot of dudes on that defense that we didn't necessarily realize. Where there are a lot of guys they took that were under the radar players, whether it be, Ephesians Prysock, who, it's hard to call a Pac-12 honorable mention under the radar.
Yeah, he's not flying under my radar. I mean, that's a good player. That's a big get.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you look at who's playing next to him, Tacario Davis, some people might not know that name. And then you look at a guy like Cam Broussard as a guy who I've been so impressed with. They move him all over the defense, Spencer. They got him playing safety. They got him playing linebacker. He's lining up as, on the edge. He's all over the formation. There are so many guys in this defense that fit the scheme so perfectly that I think it's really going to maximize a lot of talent on just up here in Mont Lake.
Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies. He's got him 8-4. I've got him 6-6. they're either destined to go 7-5 or one of us is just going to be wildly off the mark. Roman, appreciate it as always.
Spencer, thanks for having me.